Okay, we're going to do this painting based on the photo by Nicolas Trudel that was on Flickr. Okay, the first thing I want to do is examine my image to kind of get it in my mind what I'm going to be doing. So when I look at this apple, what I see are, for the most part, two different reds. A very dark red that's almost black, which is on the bottom, and then a bright orange red that is on the top. I also see a couple highlighted areas or reflected light. There's an area on the left in the dark shape that has a reflection on it, and then two areas on the top of the apple that have reflections. As I look at these colors, I think, are they white or almost white? I don't feel like they're the true white of the background. They're slightly grayer for the darker reflection and then pinker for the top reflections. You know, at this point, if I had a color mixing chart, I would get my color mixing chart out and I would lay it down and then compare, like figure out what colors I can use to make that top color. In my case, I'll be using Cadmium Red and some Alizarin Crimson, and then what colors I could use to make that almost black color. Now in art, black is a boring color, so I'm not going to make it true black, I'm going to make it a dark red. And I'm going to try to mix my dark red by mixing the Alizarin Crimson with other dark colors. So I will be using Alizarin Crimson and Burnt Umber with a little Ultramarine Blue. Once I know my colors, I can get started with the drawing. Okay, I'm just going to begin by drawing in the apple. I'm just holding the back of my pencil, so I'm not going to do details, and I'm just trying to draw the rough shape of the apple and the drips coming from it. Then I'm drawing where the stem appears, the highlights along the top of the apple. I'm just drawing in the shapes I just talked about. And then I'm drawing in a line dividing where that dark area, that almost red, the red dark black is from that lighter color. And then I'll go and start using thinned paint to do a light application. I haven't painted for a couple days, so I'm beginning. You can see here I have my palette knife and I'm just scraping off the top. There's like an outer skin that has dried on my paint. I'm using oil paint, so this is a good thing to do, to just scrape off that outer skin because there will be fresh white paint underneath. For this painting, I'm going to be using Titanium White, Cadmium Red, pale or light, Alizarin Crimson, my favorite color, and also some Burnt Umber, and then I'm also going to use some Ultramarine Blue for this. I need those last two colors, the Burnt Umber and the Ultramarine Blue, to make the darks. I'm going to begin by I'm using my phone as a photo reference. I wasn't able to print it out or to use my tablet for this one, so I'm just using my small phone screen. Personally, this isn't my favorite way to work, but it's doable. Okay, I'm going to begin by using thinned out paint. So for me, I'm using oil paint, so this means I use a lot of thinner and a little bit of paint. I'm beginning with Burnt Umber and mixing it with a little Alizarin Crimson to get that dark area. If you were using acrylics, you would just be doing the same colors, but with a lot of water added instead of the thinner. And I'm just putting this dark area, this dark color on any dark area. So I have it on the side of the apple and then also the drips. And then next, I'm going to mix a lighter color by using my thinner plus just the red cadmium light. And you really want to use a lot of thinner at this place, or a lot of water, so that your paint is very thinned out and drippy. Now I'm applying this to just kind of like break myself into the painting. So I'm starting kind of light by just using thinned out paint. And I'm also starting to figure out where the dark areas are and where the light areas. It's nice if you go too dark while the paint's wet, you can use your towel or a paper towel to wipe off some to go a little lighter. Now I'm also going to start doing the background. I actually did this kind of backwards. If I was thinking more, I would have started with my white background, you know, thinning that and putting that in, and then the apple on top of that. Pure white is a little bit boring, so I'm mixing a little blue into my background. Okay, I actually gave that a couple minutes to dry, but then I'm going to come back with just regular paint and I'm going to block in the color now. That means I'm going to use not that small of a brush, but I'm just trying to mix the right color and just put it in. So I'm going to once again hold off on details and just trying to do the main things we talked about at the start. I'm trying to do a dark color on the bottom, a lighter, warmer red color on top, and with some of those highlights. So for now, I'm even like ignoring where the stem is. And I'm using the colors that I discussed before. So I'm using Alizarin Crimson for that main red, but I'm adding in a little burnt umber and a little Ultramarine Blue to make that color darker. I don't know yet to put in the highlight or not. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the top and I'm just going to play around for a little bit. I know that I want to use Cadmium Red and Alizarin Crimson for that color, but I'm not sure how much Cadmium Red and how much Alizarin Crimson. So I'm just going to make different piles of color and just try it out here. I've also noticed that where the stem goes in, it's a little bit cooler. That might be harder to see, or a little bit darker. So I'm just trying to make a small difference in that red where the stem goes in. Trying to get it warmer still and lighter for the top. Now in art, any color that's lighter than the one we're using is going to make this lighter. So I need a lighter color. So I'm just using Cadmium Red. I am not reaching for my white yet to make that lighter. My white will really drastically change the colors. And I just want it a little lighter. So I'm just adding more Cadmium Red to my Alizarin Crimson to get that color lighter. Now I am going and I'm mixing some of those highlighted colors. So I'm going to use white for that. It gets slightly cooler on the edges. This whole video is, I've edited it so it's twice as fast as I painted. I usually paint much slower than this. But I tried to do a video that's only twice as fast and it has minimal cuts on it. I cut out some things that are just too boring. But overall, this is, yeah, just slightly quicker than it is. Now I'm looking at it, and that is the basic painting done, but it needs to be slightly darker. So I've just mixed another dark color that just means more burnt umber and ultramarine, and I'm placing it down. So at this point in our painting, We're really trying hard not to get details, but we're just looking at the overall thing. So I keep on squinting my eyes and looking at the image and looking at my painting to see that they match. And I know that often we don't go dark enough, so I'm asking if they match and if it's dark enough, because we tend not to go dark enough. And then I'm going over what was a toned canvas. I don't want to leave it this like really thin paint, so I'm just going over all my dark areas with darker paint. Okay, I'm starting to work into the small details. So now I'm letting myself use a smaller brush and go back and adjust those highlights, and then I'll also like put in the stem. It's good, once again, to take breaks during this process, you guys, because you'll see differences if you take a break. Another good thing to do is to, if you do have it on your phone, you can also zoom in at this time into your image and try to see more subtle differences. So there's drips on the side of this apple that I'm placing in now. And I'm still just trying to stick with those colors that I used before, that I talked about before. In paint, the more colors I add together, the duller that image gets. So because I want a really bright red on top, I'm sticking with Alizarin Crimson and Cadmium Red with slight touches of white added to it. I'm going to put in the stem. So for the stem, I'm using burnt umber, and then I don't have yellow ochre on my palette, so I'm going to use some of that lemon yellow, but yellow ochre would be really good for the stem as well. The stem is dark on the top and then light on the side, on the right side. I'm going to just do a few more details, and then I'm going to, because I'm using oils, I will stop for a day and let this paint dry a little bit. I really want to paint that background. I'm kind of frustrated that I didn't do that at the start, and it's particularly hard to change the color between the drifts. So I'm going to finish these details, and then leave this painting for a little bit. So I'm going to let that paint dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to paint the whole background. Now that the paint on the apple isn't quite dry, but it's not as I don't know how to say the word gushy or mushy as it was before. So I'm just going really close. I'm still trying to be careful, but because it's a little dry, I can go pretty close to it and not smear it. I've decided to do that background, like I said before, slightly bluer. So I'm just painting in the background, and technically we can move our canvas any way we want. Like, we tend to always think, oh no, the top has to be up, but it can be easier to paint sometimes if we move it around. So I'm just moving it so I can more easily paint. It's always good to put in a background, even if it's a pure white background like this. We want a painting that works well from far away and from up close. And so if we look up close and it's just a dull white raw canvas, that's not the best. Okay, and then I'm just going to put in my final details. Again, this is good to do if you've taken a break for a day. You can see it afresh. When I look at my painting, I can see that I'm actually missing a slightly cool, light reflection on the edge. And then I also think those highlights, they need to be lighter than I have them. And then the drips need some individual highlights. So I'm just going to be playing around with that, adding small details and slightly changing things. A good painting will have the basic color differences, but a really good painting, the more attention and details you can find later on in the process, not at the start, but the more attention and details you can find, the stronger your painting will be. And if you can really get lost in the process and find these small value differences or temperature differences, your painting will be amazing. So it's about, a good painting is about looking really well and having patience. Probably having patience is the most important thing to do a good painting. So I'm just brightening up that highlight, what I'm doing is I have a little bit of pink on my brush, or in this case purple, and I'm putting it on the highlight and then lightly stroking it around. I'm actually darkening and cooling down that stem. What I really need for this painting is this like bright red, and I feel like I'm just still trying to play around to get that right red. But it's the same colors I've been dealing with all along, that cadmium red and the Alizarin Crimson. Okay, I'm just coming in here and I'm just adding in a few more highlights on this right section. So there's some reflected light on this right side, on the bottom, and on the drip I have to add in. I'm just still doing those final touch-ups before I'm all finished with this painting. And this is just the white paint that has been mixed with the Alizarin Crimson and I think a little Cadmium Red too. But it's mainly Alizarin Crimson. I'm just trying to put the paint down and then just dragging it with my brush. Okay, and that's basically it, you guys. Okay, thank you.